Hello once again, everybody. It's Chris Bezanoy with ICE TV, brought to you by IceCan.com. Today we're continuing our series that we've called Facility Design 101 for Cannabis Production Facilities. Today we're going to talk about the exterior of your site and things to watch out for. Let's dive right in. As you can see in front of me here, this is the actual exterior design for the facility we've been going through. Go ahead and watch those other videos. We talk about secured storage, we talk about flower rooms, talk about office areas, shipping, receiving, that sort of thing. Nonetheless, this is the actual exterior design for that facility. You notice that this exterior design comes complete with a fence. This is an ideal security feature. We always recommend a fence wherever possible. Sometimes local building code doesn't allow you to have a fence. Sometimes you can only have a fence on 3 sides of the property. Nonetheless, we always recommend a fence. A fence should usually be about 6 feet high, maybe 7 feet high, maybe even 8 feet high with a 1-foot barbed wire top guard. Of course, if you're going to be doing a fence, you want to have access control into that fence line. We always recommend a sliding gate. This is a vehicle gate. It could be motorized or it could be manual. Keep in mind, if it's manual, you have to protect it with a padlock. We always recommend motorized sliding gates for vehicle entrance. The reason being is that somebody inside of the facility, once they know that there's a vehicle outside of this motorized gate, can press a button and remotely open this vehicle gate. Therefore, they never need to leave the facility, walk all the way to this padlocked gate to open it up if it's a manual gate. So again, we always like motorized gates. You can use manual. Always recommend sliding, not swinging. You're going to have to take into consideration weather. It's very difficult to open a swinging gate when the gates are behind 30 feet of snow. So motorized gate is always key. And keep in mind that motorized gate will keep that gate closed with the motor itself, and it will always remain locked unless opened. You're going to want to protect this motorized gate with a gate contact for security. You'll also notice that there is a pedestrian gate. This is also very important. Not only could you put access control on this gate so that employees can enter into the fence compound if they're dropped off by somebody with a car. So in other words, you don't need to necessarily have this gate opened and a vehicle come all the way to the front door if they're just workers being dropped off for the day. You give them the ability to go through this manual gate using card access. But this is also very important because of egress. If there is a fire, let's say, or there's an emergency situation, you can't expect that this motorized gate will be opened because typically they remain closed. Sometimes you can configure them with the fire systems. Sometimes you can have a security guard and their job is whenever there's an alarm to remotely open this gate. Nonetheless, you can't count on the gate and it will not pass fire code also for egress, especially in a fenced compound. So we want to put a pedestrian gate to make sure that there's free egress at all times. Usually it's a crash bar on this side of the gate so that you can get out. This particular gate swings in. I'm going to have to actually go back and look at this design again because I believe it should swing out. Nonetheless, most likely it swings out now. This facility was designed a year ago or so. Nonetheless, you just want to make sure you have access control and crash bar out, and of course door contact protecting that door. As we move through the exterior of this facility, you'll notice that there are some fire water tank storage areas. This is probably for fire code. There's obviously not necessarily running water that's coming to this facility that's ideal for fire suppression or for fire services. So there's a fire water storage tank. We've got a garbage area, which is ideal. Again, this could be used for regular refuse, but also for cannabis waste, should you be denaturing with kitty litter and that sort of thing. We've got chiller pads. We've got a generator pad. A generator is a very important piece of equipment for your facility, not only to attach the security equipment to it upon power fail, but also you might want to have some of your working lights and that sort of thing attached to it. A generator is a very good idea. I wouldn't recommend a generator be put inside of your facility. It's typically on the outside. As we continue along, we've got chiller pad and transformer pad. These are things that don't necessarily need to be there, but they are for this particular design. You'll also notice that there is parking areas. This I highly recommend for any facility. You want to make sure that your staff is safe almost at all times whenever they're in the fenced compound. I say almost because sometimes things do happen, but generally speaking, if you give an employee access into the fence line through this motorized gate, they should feel safe leaving their vehicle and going into the facility. So we always recommend that parking spots be made available within the fenced compound of your facility. If it is not available and you cannot put parking inside of your fence line, you could put them on the outside, which is fine. It's nothing wrong with that. Make sure they're in close proximity to your pedestrian gate so that there is less walking that a person needs to do before they get into the fenced compound. As we continue along, there are things that we should note that are very important. We talked about this earlier in another video, but we like intercoms. There's an intercom here, there's an intercom here, and there's an intercom at the front door. And the idea is that when somebody comes into the motorized gate, should they be remotely let in, you give them the ability to go to wherever they need to go, and they can talk with somebody inside the facility, and they can give direction to that courier or to that truck driver saying, hey, please wait outside the door, I'm on my way, or please, when I open up the overhead door, go ahead and step into the facility. Either way you look at it, intercoms are a very ideal communications tool. You'll also notice that generally speaking, there are cameras on the outside of the facility. I do talk about cameras in another video series that is basically a security system designed for a medium facility. In fact, it's going to be this facility specifically. We talk about video surveillance, intrusion, and access control. Also, things that you need to be mindful of whenever you're designing your facility, make sure it's got flat areas and make sure those areas can be paved or at least with gravel. You could have grass between the fence line and your building. Keep in mind it's going to be maintained. You're going to have to give space for maintenance staff, which is why we always like to make sure the distance between the fence line and the facility is not too far away, because then it plays havoc with your cameras, and let's face it, it's a lot to maintain. But also close enough to the building so that we can have ideal camera coverage and we don't have too much expense for the fence itself. But also standoff to make sure that you can maintain the areas between the fence line and your building. And also from a security point of view, it's the fence line is the first layer of defense, and you want to delay somebody should they happen to break through the fence getting into your facility. So the fence line is the first line, and the longer it takes them to get to this facility, it's just more time for police services or alarm response to show up. Generally speaking, you want to make sure that your land is flat. There is no, make sure you do an environmental study. Make sure it's not on protected land. Make sure there's no sewage underneath it. Don't make sure it's not in a swampy area. You're going to want to make sure also that you can have paved areas for your deliveries, like for your couriers or for your supply delivery. You got to be mindful. Sometimes couriers will not go into a facility or into a fence compound if it's difficult to get into driving wise. Plus, there's snow removal that you have to consider also. So I would pave these areas if you can, or at least have them with rock. The other thing that we want to be mindful of whenever we're looking at the exterior of the facility is location to trees and that sort of thing. It's okay to have trees on the outside. In fact, it offers a good scent control situation whereby you're going to want to do scent control in your facility anyways. But sometimes if you have trees around your facility, especially around your fence line, it just helps to contain any odors that may leave your site. That being said, very, very simple design. We talked about the intercoms. We like the parking within the fence line. We talked about the fence line itself, motorized gate. We've got a pedestrian entrance. Make sure that is also free egress at all times. You're going to protect the outside with your cameras. Make sure there's enough standoff distance. Make sure you have it paved or gravel, let's say, if you can. Make sure the shipping and receiving areas are easily accessible. You'll notice that there's a fair amount of space for a vehicle to get in here or a vehicle to get in here. That's ideal. You want to make sure that the turnaround areas for a truck are not too small. All too often I've seen where the shipping and receiving is a very small area, very little space between the building, the shipping and receiving, and the fence line, and a courier vehicle or a truck comes in to try to turn around to back in, and they can't. Why? Because the fence is too close. So just be mindful of the area around your shipping and receiving. Make sure it's big enough for a vehicle to turn around. Make sure it's big enough for almost two vehicles to go side by side. The last thing I'll note, and we do go through this with the security video, especially for exterior, you're going to want to have intercoms and you're going to want to have access control outside of your fence line. And you want to make sure that any couriers that come in can use the intercom. They can use an access control reader if they are allowed access into the fence compound. Employees will have a card access to get in. You want to make sure you give them the ability to leave by pressing an intercom also, or by using their access card. So just one thing to consider, make sure you can easily maintain this motorized gate both ways. Make sure there's intercoms and maybe access control in the path of the vehicle travel. So you do not want to have an intercom, let's say here, and an access card here, because that require a courier or a truck driver to come all the way out here, park their truck or leave it idle, get out of the truck, go and use the intercom, be instructed to leave, run back into their truck, and then go. That's really not ideal. So you want to make sure that you have your intercom and your access control in an area that's conducive for vehicle travel. In other words, in this case, you'd probably want a pedestal right here that has access control and intercom because most people drive on the left-hand side of the road. And you're also going to want it here for anybody coming in, just to make sure there's flow of traffic, people coming in, flow of traffic, people coming out. And of course, most people drive on the left-hand side. When you're driving on the right-hand side of a vehicle, you just swap the areas that you have this access control and intercom. Either way you look at it, fairly simple design. Exterior does get a little tricky, so make sure that you take into consideration security and of course path of travel. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. This informative video was brought to you by IceCan.com, the industry's first marketplace for new and used equipment. Whether you're looking for brand new equipment for your cannabis venture, maybe you're looking for some used equipment, we can easily source that for you and ship it to you anywhere in the world, right to your front doorstep. Maybe you're looking for some services. We know a lot of great people in this industry. You've been around for the past 10 years. We can easily help you and refer you to anybody that you may need, whether it's advisory services, regulatory compliance, maybe you're looking for some funding for your cannabis venture. Either way you look at it, we can easily help source that consultancy or that service you may need. Once again, thanks for watching. This is ICE TV, brought to you by IceCan.com.